Over the past 30 decades, coffee has been one of the most important contributors to the revenue of Vietnam agricultural industry in particular and to the country's GDP in general. The coffee industry creates more than 500,000 direct and indirect farming jobs and is the main livelihood of thousands of households in the agricultural production area. With an estimated export turnover of over 3 billion US dollar. Coffee export value usually account for about 15% of total agricultural export turnover, and the proportion of coffee has almost exceeded 10% of agricultural GDP in recent years. The two main coffee types of Robusta and Arabica are both put into production in Vietnam. While Robusta accounts for circa 93% of the total coffee production area and 97% of total productions, Arabica is responsible for only a few remaining percent. The total area covered by coffee farming is estimated at 670,000 hectares, with the main coffee growing provinces located in the Central Highlands, including Đắk Lắk, Lâm Đồng, Đắk Nông, Gia Lai, and Kon Tum. Since the Robusta play a key role, here we would like to have some discussions and comment on the production situation of this coffee type in Vietnam. Vietnam is currently the most productive Robusta coffee growing country in the world with an average yield of 2.7 tons of green bean per hectare. There are two coffee farming systems in Vietnam, which are monoculture and polyculture. For Robusta coffee, the density is about 1,100 trees per hectare. The cultivations usually begin during the rainy seasons. Although it can end at the end of the rainy seasons, coffee tree need to be provided with enough water and exposed to sunlight and protected from the wind afterwards. For the purpose of shading the tree and ensuring a stable income for coffee grower, the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development has introduced a number of intercropping techniques with other crops such as pepper, avocado, durian, and macadamia in the coffee garden. These strategies not only help diversify product, create more jobs, as well as increase income for farmers, but also play the role of shading, blocking the wind, limiting evaporations, and keeping moisture to contribute to the sustainable coffee development in the context of climate change. To date, more than 100,000 hectares of such diverse farms have been developed in Vietnam, mainly in the Central Highlands. In addition to expanding the cultivation area, in terms of coffee farming practices for sustainable development, many Vietnamese coffee farmers have been applying advanced agricultural production technologies to get popular certifications such as 4C, VietGAP, U-Certified, and Rainforest Alliance, etc. As of the end of 2017, more than 200,000 hectares, accounting for more than 30% of Vietnam's total coffee growing area, were certified by Sustainable Development Initiative in terms of variety. Since the early 1990s, when coffee was widely grown in the Central Highland provinces, many agricultural seedling research institutes, especially the Central Highland Forestry Science Institute, WASI, have studied, invented, and introduced many different Robusta varieties. The selective breeding process has resulted in dozens of new Robusta varieties, differing in growth strength, adaptability to soil and climate resistance to pests and diseases, with higher yield, 3.5 tons per hectare and above. This typical late ripening and hybrid variety have been named by Vietnamese researchers for generations from TR4, TR5, TR6, TR7, TR8, TR9, TR11, TR12, TR13, TR14, TR15, and TRS1. These above clones that have been the most popular and widely planted by farmers in recent years are the TR14 and TR15 generations, which are very well adapted to climate change, and TRS1, which respond well to the need of rejuvenation program. In terms of farm design, most farmers follow the recommendations made by the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, so growing coffee at the density of 1,100 Gs per hectare. However, according to the topographical characteristic of each area, flat or sloping land, the density of tea may be higher or lower than the recommended level. Perhaps Vietnam is the only country producing coffee in the world that creates a basin to plant coffee tea in. Creating basin for coffee plant has many benefits. When watering, helps plant contain the required amount of water without being drained, which help to save more water for irrigation in the dry seasons. Standing in a basin, the coffee tea become more resistant to drought because the roots are only concentrated in the surface layer up about 30 centimeters. Thanks to making a basin, the root of the tea will be brought down deeper. The fertility of the soil is also improved better to help the root develop well. Creating a basin for coffee plant also help prevent soil erosion and soil washout during the rainy seasons. In terms of fertilization, in order to achieve an average coffee yield of 3 tons per hectare, farmers usually use 3 tons and 2 tons of inorganic fertilizer for 1 hectare of mature coffee trees grow on the balanced red soil and other types of soil respectively. In addition, 10 to 15 tons of rotting organic fertilizer or 2 to 3 tons of microorganisms are also added every crop. 500 kilograms of live powder is also periodically applied every 2 years. In order for coffee tea to effectively absorb the amount of fertilizer applied, farmers are advised to apply the 5 right principle, which are right amount of fertilizer, right type of fertilizations, right time, right frequency, and right method. In terms of pruning is an important and necessary shaping technique in the process of taking care of coffee trees to help them grow healthy for high yield. Pruning helps to remove diseased branches and the unproductive ones that do not bear cherries and compete for nutrients with the secondary branches. When being pruned properly, the tree will give high yield, recover quickly after each harvest, give larger cherries, and limit some pests and diseases for coffee garden. In Vietnam, the most common pruning method is the single stem one. For the first pruning round, capping or cutting off the top of the stem is conducted when the tree reaches a height of 120 centimeters after circa 3 to 4 years. That means for immature coffee. It can be done earlier in case of fast-growing coffee variety. Farmers cut off the stem at a height of 100 centimeters and let new stems develop. Then farmer will select the strongest one to develop the second canopy layer while removing the weaker stem. The second round of pruning is conducted when the tree reaches a height of 170 centimeters. At that time, farmer will cut off the stem at a height of 150 centimeters. New stem will develop, and farmer will select the strongest one to develop the third canopy layer while removing the weaker stem. On top of that, farmer also cut off natural branches growing at unfavorable positions, such as the ones touching the ground the ones growing toward the stem and the ones growing vertically downward that disease-infected, old or stunted branches are also removed during the pruning process. In terms of watering, watering for coffee plants is one of the unique farming practices of Robusta coffee industry in Vietnam. With the soil moisture content of 37%, the coffee tree reaches the best growth level. However, with long dry season lasting 6 months in the Central Highland, the major Robusta producing region of Vietnam, under prolonged drought conditions, the soil dry out and tree start to wilt. Leaves turn yellow and branches dry. Without being watered, coffee tree can die out. Depending on weather conditions, coffee farmers conduct from 3 to 5 rounds of irrigations during the dry seasons of the year with different methods, which are Pezzin, overhead sprinkler, micro sprinkler, and drip irrigation. The most common irrigation method applied by coffee farmers in Vietnam today remain the Pezzin irrigations with the amount of water recommended by the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development and other sustainable coffee production program at 400 liters per plant per hour. Processing. The most common processing technique in Vietnam is the natural drying method. In this method, the coffee is dried under sunlight or in a mechanical dryer. Currently, almost 80% of post-harvest processing is done by sunlight. However, coffee farmer, producer, and trader in the Central Highland region are now increasingly using machine to dry coffee cherries. The drying time is about 12 to 16 hours per batch, and the moisture content is reduced down to 10% to 12%. The main raw material used as fuel for dryer is dry coffee husks. Processing infrastructure in areas with high potential for coffee, such as Đắk Lắk and Lâm Đồng, and standard storage space for coffee bean after processing are still lacking in quantity. Therefore, it is difficult for the producer to achieve requirement of buyer for high-quality coffee bean. Meanwhile, large-scale coffee producers mainly use wet processing technologies, which are applied in many other countries around the world. There are hundreds of factories across the country with wet or dry processing technology, mainly located in the Central Highland and Southeast region of Vietnam. The design capacity in the range of 1.5 million tons a year is sufficient to meet the need of green coffee processing in the country. Typically, in Đắk Lắk province, 16 wet processing plants have been established with a total annual capacity of over 64,000 tons of products. Now I would like to talk about challenges and prospects of Vietnam coffee industry. After more than 30 years of development, Vietnam's coffee industry is facing serious challenges such as climate change, competition from other crops, need for rejuvenation of aging coffee tea. Production costs are increasing while world coffee prices are at very low level. Due to fierce competition, Vietnam's coffee production policy has moved into a new area with two goals, which are maintaining the position as the world's second largest coffee producer and exporter, and doubling the added value in coffee production by increasing productivity, quality, and added value. Over the past several decades, Vietnamese coffee productions has developed as an export-oriented industry with its positions as the world's second largest coffee producer and exporter. However, Vietnamese coffee is currently facing a number of problems and challenges such as climate change with extreme weather conditions put coffee growing area in danger. According to the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, CIAT, rising temperature and changing rainfall could cause Vietnam to lose 50% of its current Robusta production area by 2050. About 50% of the total coffee tree grown in Vietnam are between 10 and 15 years old, which is the highest yielding group. In the coming years, Vietnamese coffee production will mainly rely on this group. As for the rest, almost 30% of the trees are between 15 and 20 years old, and about 20% are over 20 years old. The current yield cannot be maintained. The area of newly planted coffee tree has increased significantly recently, but most of them are not in the plant area, mainly located in unsuitable area with shallow, steep, slopy, lack of irrigation water, etc. Therefore, although the new planting area has increased, achieving high economic efficiency is difficult because of low productivity and high production costs. The intensive farming practices have used too many input, fertilizer, herbicide, pesticide, and irrigations, etc., to achieve maximum yield. Consequently, not only coffee trees are quickly depleted and losing their productive capacity, but such practices are led to severely contaminated soil, which lead to many diseases and pests, especially fungi and root nematodes. The small-scale and fragmentation production form and independent of farming household are resulted in a low quality and unstable productions. Differences in investment, harvesting, and processing among producers have affected the quality of the entire Vietnamese coffee industry. Although coffee is a water-intensive crop, traditional but outdated irrigation is still the main method used in most coffee growing regions, causing severe dehydrations in many localities. Drilling ground for irrigations has led to destructions of groundwater resources and soil pollution, which is wasteful and inefficient. Regarding prospect and planning, despite the challenges mentioned, the Vietnamese coffee sector has a strong plan for the future development. To deal with these challenges, Vietnam's policymakers have introduced long-term reform of the country industry. In 2014, the government outlined a plan for sustainable coffee development to 2020 and a vision to 2030, an open agenda for sustainable management of economic and environmental resources for the coffee industry with a view on increasing export income and ensure stable productions. The plan includes specific economic goals for industry performance, such as enhancing value-added processing to reach an export turnover of $6 billion over the next decade. It also set specific environmental goals, including limiting coffee farming nationwide to 600,000 hectares, replacing old low-yielding coffee tree with new, higher-yielding and pest-resistant variety coffee rezoning and introducing water-saving irrigation method, as well as setting new safety and environmental standards for fertilizer and pesticides, are also other important targets included in the plan. It can be said that the Vietnamese coffee industry has been forced to look to the future to address environmental and economic gaps. These targets are an indication that Vietnam hopes to maintain its status as a coffee powerhouse, ensuring stable production conditions for the future.